The silence between your thoughts is not empty. It is sacred. In that stillness, something ancient remembers itself. It is not a place you go. It is a place you are when all striving ceases, when all effort dissolves, and only awareness remains. This is the door, and you have brushed against it more times than you can count, though the world has taught you to overlook it. But tonight something shifts. You begin to feel the truth underneath the noise, beneath the urgent voice that wants to do and fix and get. The one who watches is awakening. Most believe manifestation is about action. They chase, they hustle, they effort themselves into exhaustion, seeking evidence in the mirror, hoping for the world to affirm what they do not yet know within. But the law does not operate by work. It operates by stillness, not the stillness of passivity, but the stillness of alignment, where consciousness becomes one with its assumption, and nothing remains to contradict it. This brings us to what most never realize. Imagination is not fantasy. It is the eternal womb, and the state akin to sleep. SATS is how you enter it consciously. It is the holy of holies, where desire is no longer a reaching, but a remembering. For what you seek is already yours in imagination, and imagination is the only reality. Feel this now, the moment just before sleep, when your body is heavy, your breath slow, and your mind no longer argues. You are not asleep, yet the world feels far. You are not awake, yet you are aware. That is the gate. That is the place where the veil thins, and what you plant there, you plant in God. For God is your own wonderful human imagination. This is not metaphor. This is not poetic flourish. This is literal spiritual law. Be still, and know that I am God. Can you hear it now? Not as a verse, but as a living voice within you. Be still. Know, I am God. You do not create from this state by force. You impress upon it through identity. What you feel yourself to be, in that luminous quiet just before the drift into sleep, is what your world must echo. For your world is your consciousness made visible, and the SATs where you touch the root. Here's where most falter. They imagine a scene, yes, but they bring with them the tension of hoping. They rehearse the outcome, but retain the identity of the one who lacks. And so the scene becomes mere fantasy, and fantasy does not create. But when you lose yourself in the scene, when the imagined experience becomes more real than the bed beneath you, you shift identity, and reality obeys the one you now are. See it now, feel it as done, not as something distant, but as something you remember. That smile on your face, the weight in your hands, the feeling of already having received. You do not visualize to get, you visualize to become, and as you become the world conforms. This is not theory, this is law. And as you rest in this state tonight, as your body softens and your breath finds rhythm, release the need to try. Let the scene rise softly, as if it has always been yours. Let it unfold without effort. Let your heart receive what your mind cannot grasp. For it is not the words, not the image, not the clarity of detail that matters. It is the feeling, the knowing, the identity shift. You do not beg the universe. You are not pleading with a power outside you. You are being the one who already is. And that knowing, that quiet assumption, plants the seed. The how is none of your concern. The seed does not need your interference. It needs your silence. Notice what shifts in you as you hear this. The hunger becomes peace. The fear dissolves into calm. The separation between you and your desire collapses into unity. This is the mystery the world cannot teach. You are not waiting for your manifestation. You are waking up inside it. And as this truth settles in your being, you may begin to feel the subtle pull inward, the sacred pause between breaths, the softness behind your eyes. Do not rush past it. This is the thin place, the veil, and what you bring with you into this holy silence becomes flesh. But what if the state akin to sleep is not just a technique for night, but a way of being in the world? What if sleep itself is not unconsciousness, but divine awareness unburdened? This prepares us for something most people never dare to ask. So then what is sleep, if not the surrender of the outer man, to reveal the inner one? The world calls it unconsciousness, but in truth it is the retreat of effort into being, and the state akin to sleep. SATS is not merely the moment before slumber, but the sacred return to your divine center, where identity is no longer argued, but assumed without resistance. It is the stillness behind the veil, where form is shaped not by action, but by knowing. You are always entering states. Every emotion, every belief, Every quiet assumption is a state. But the state akin to sleep is different. It is the threshold between worlds. The mind, no longer clinging to reason, begins to float. The body, freed from identity, begins to fade. And in that softness the soul speaks, not in words, but in impressions, subtle, yet more real than anything the senses offer. Most rush past it. They miss it entirely. They try to do their imaginal act, but the trying itself is resistance. They worry if they're doing it right, if the image is clear, if the scene is long enough. But all of that belongs to the mind. The law responds not to words, not to images, but to being. And being is silent. The secret is to feel the naturalness of the thing longed for, to no longer long, but to rest in it as one rests in breath. When you touch the state akin to sleep, there is no effort to maintain the scene. It lives in you like memory. It rises gently, like a dream you have chosen to keep dreaming. You sit at the edge of sleep, and you feel your wish fulfilled, not as a hope, but as a fact already complete. And in that sweet surrender, your being shifts, not the world, not yet, but you. And because the world is yourself pushed out, it has no choice but to echo your transformation. Let the outer world be as it is. Let it contradict you. Let appearances dance their tired dance. But you withdraw attention from the surface and return to the depth. There in the deep, you are not the one who wants, but the one who is. There you do not visualize to convince yourself, but to commune with your true identity. Feel it now, the soft unfolding. Let the scene of your wish gently wrap around your senses, like a blanket of remembrance. Do not narrate. Do not control. Rest in the feeling that it is done. Let the imaginal act become your sanctuary, your temple not made with hands. You do not need to wake up to see it, because this is the waking. And then, forget it. Not with resistance, but with trust. For seeds grow best when left alone. You do not watch the roots to force their bloom. You know they are planted, and that is enough. So it is with your assumption. This is why it happens in the state akin to sleep, because here, there is no judgment. Here the gods of reason are drowsy. The door is open, and your imagination, pure and unhindered, can impress upon the infinite. This is what it means to be born again, not of flesh, but of spirit, not by effort, but by knowing. Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. Do you see? The awakening is not to the outer world, but to your inner identity. You are not becoming. You are remembering. You are not attracting. You are embodying. And in this state, what you accept as true becomes law unto you. Notice the breath in your body, now the way the muscles of your face soften, the space between thoughts that stretches just a little wider. This is holy ground. The temple of the living God is within you, and you are seated in it, crowned with your assumption. Not tomorrow, not after proof. Now, let go of the outer waiting. Let go of the proof-seeking mind. Enter the stillness, and know what you claim in consciousness is already finished. The world delays only because you delay the knowing, but the moment you rest in it, it begins. The unseen roots take hold, the mirror starts to turn, and as you rest in this awareness, a deeper question begins to rise, not of technique, but of self. For if you can be anything in imagination, then who are you really? What is this self you return to in stillness, over and over again, the one untouched by time or doubt? This brings us to the deeper truth, hidden in the silence, behind the silence. The silence behind the silence is not empty, it is full of knowing. It is the birthplace of form, the ground of all becoming, and when you touch it, even for a breath, you no longer seek signs. You are the sign. You are the living proof of what you have assumed, long before the shadow world begins to reflect it. And so the question gently stirs within you, if this stillness creates, then who is the one who sits in it? Not the name you were given, not the roles you perform, not even the story of your past, or the shape of your fears. That self is a garment, beautiful and temporary, but beneath it lives the eternal one, the imaginal being who chooses and becomes, without needing permission from the outer world. That one does not strive, it knows, it assumes, and the world obeys. The state akin to sleep is how you return to this deeper self, without distraction, the drowsy borderland, where thinking dissolves into awareness, where identity is felt, rather than explained. In this sacred condition, your inner world becomes sovereign, and as you dwell in it, not as a visitor, but as its rightful inhabitant, you awaken the word within you. Most wait for proof to believe, But in this law, belief is the proof. What you accept as true in imagination becomes the structure of your tomorrows. It need not be seen to be real. In fact, it must be assumed before it can be seen. You must walk by faith, not by sight. But this faith is not blind. It is creative. It is the knowing that because you have felt it as done, it must become visible. So you surrender, not to sleep, but to identity. You no longer act as one who waits. You become the one who already possesses. And from that state, your assumption is not a demand. It is a natural reflection. The scene you play in the inner theater is not a request. It is a decree. Enter the imaginal act, not with desperation, but with delight. Let it be gentle. Let it rise like incense, curling into the air, without effort. You are not trying to force the world. You are simply tuning the inner atmosphere to match your desire. You are setting the tone of your consciousness, and all else follows. Do not worry if the scene is short, or if the image fades. What matters is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Just a breath of it, felt sincerely, is enough to set the course. The feeling is the fuse, and in that silent knowing, the state takes root. When you enter SATS, you are stepping behind the curtain. You are becoming the cause, and causes do not beg, they create. You are not reacting to the world anymore. You are calling it forth. Like the potter with clay, you impress your image onto the formless, and the form must obey. Call those things which be not as though they were. This is not poetic suggestion. It is divine instruction. You are not limited by what has been. You are not bound by what appears. You are only bound by what you accept. And in this sacred state, you can accept anything. You can become anything. You can remember yourself as the one who already is. Feel it now. Let your breath carry you inward. Let your body rest. Let the outer concerns drift like smoke. And in this holy stillness, choose. Choose not with tension, but with reverence. Choose with the full authority of your divine self. What you claim here becomes the law of your being. What you embody now, the world will echo soon. You may not see how. That is not your role. You are not the architect of the bridge. You are the one who stands at the end, already having arrived, and watches the way unfold beneath your feet. The world reshapes itself around your inner stance, so rest there, in that inner temple, in that calm knowing, and as you feel your wish fulfilled, let it soak into every cell of your being. Let it imprint itself in your breath, your posture, your silence. Do not reach for it, receive it, accept it as already yours. And in this still, sacred place, another whisper begins to rise, not about what you desire, but about what you are, not about creating a new condition, but about revealing the truth that has always been buried beneath your forgetting. What if this entire journey is not about getting, but about returning to what has never left? What if your desire is simply the echo of your own divine nature, calling you back to itself? Desire, then, is not a signal of lack, but a signal of memory. It is the soul's gentle way of guiding you home. When you feel the pull of a wish, it is not something new being born, it is something eternal being remembered. The true self, the divine image, buried under layers of forgetting, rises again through feeling, and in the sacred quiet of the state, akin to sleep, that buried self speaks with a clarity the world cannot offer. You are not chasing a future, you are uncovering a hidden now. The desire is not outside of you, it is you, whispered through the soft language of longing. To feel it as already fulfilled is not imagination, it is resurrection. You are calling yourself forth from the tomb of old beliefs. That is why the law works by assumption, not because assumption is wishful thinking, but because assumption is identity made flesh. You do not attract what you want, you reflect what you are. And to enter the state akin to sleep is to slip quietly beneath all contradiction, and wear the garment of the one who already knows, already lives, already is. This is why effort is the great illusion. The outer man wants to strive, to force, to repeat affirmations and analyze signs. But the inner man knows that the moment the feeling is natural, the seed is sown. Nature does not hurry, yet all is accomplished. You plant by feeling, and you harvest by faith. It need not feel dramatic. It need not be perfect. Even the faintest touch of the fulfilled desire, felt in that gentle twilight of consciousness, begins the creation. It's not the strength of the scene, but the sincerity of surrender. You are not performing for the universe. You are coming home to yourself. Feel it now. That soft inner smile, that deep exhale, that says it is done. No words need to be spoken. No image must be held. Only this holy ease, this sacred relaxation into the truth of being. You are not becoming, you are remembering. The world outside may still reflect yesterday's belief, but you are seated in today's knowing, and because the world has no choice but to mirror consciousness, it must follow. Let time do what it will. Your only work is to remain inwardly faithful. Do not reach back into the old state to check the soil. Let the roots grow in silence. Let the seen world be still, even if it contradicts. Your trust in the unseen is the womb of miracles. What you assume in the quiet is not lost, it is written. He calleth those things which be not as though they were. Can you feel the power in that? You are not forecasting, you are naming, and naming is claiming. When in SATS you are not wishing for a different world, you are naming yourself anew. You are declaring, I am loved, I am chosen, I am whole, I am free. Not someday, not when, now. And the world, like a faithful shadow, will rearrange itself to bear witness. There is no effort in this place, only rest. You rest not because the work is undone, but because the work is finished. And in that restful knowing, the word becomes flesh. You do not command the branches to bloom. You simply know that spring has come. Let your imaginal scene be light. Let it feel like something remembered, not something created, like returning to a place you once lived. You do not doubt its walls, or question its smell, or force its appearance. You know it, and that knowing is the foundation of manifestation. This is the sacred art, to rest in the end, as though it were the beginning, to dwell in the echo before the sound has come, to walk as the one who already holds the gift. And when you feel this within SATS, even for a breath, you have moved the mountain. Remain here a moment longer, not with tension, but with trust, not with words, but with breath. Let the stillness speak on your behalf. Let the feeling do the work. You have entered the temple. The law is alive within you. But what if even this calm, deliberate entering, could be lived with eyes open? What if the state, akin to sleep, was not only for the night, but for every quiet moment throughout the day? What if the waking world was just another dream to be shaped by your inner gaze? What if the veil between dreaming and waking is thinner than you've ever known? What if the state akin to sleep is not confined to nightfall, but lingers like a hush beneath every breath, waiting to be entered, not through closing the eyes, but through softening the self? This is the forgotten art of remaining inwardly anchored, while outwardly active, of moving through the world, while seated in heaven. You do not need a bed to descend into the sacred state. You need only a pause, a breath, a return to your inner sanctuary, where the wish is already fulfilled. The world may shout with noise and urgency, but the soul whispers only truth, and it whispers always the same message. You are already what you seek to become. When you practice this stillness in motion, you begin to live from the end without effort. You do not have to remind yourself to hold the assumption. It holds you. It becomes the atmosphere in which you walk, the fragrance you carry, invisible but undeniable. You may speak as you always have, move through routines as before, but underneath it all, something has changed. A deeper identity has been claimed. This is the true prayer without ceasing, not the repetition of words, but the constancy of being. You dwell in the state as naturally as a singer carries a tune, or a lover carries the memory of touch. It does not require force, it only requires faithfulness. You may find, in the still hours of the day, that the same ease you touch at night returns unbidden, a wave of knowing, a breath of the fulfilled desire, and in that moment, time bends. You are no longer walking toward it, you are walking from it. You look at the world, not with longing, but with quiet recognition. It is already mine. The key is not in how much you visualize or how long you sit still. It is in the purity of identity. If you can become in imagination the one who has, the world must reflect that state. It cannot do otherwise. It is obedient to your inner dominion. Do not wait for quiet moments. Create them. Even now, let your shoulders fall. Let the breath deepen. Let your gaze soften. Without closing your eyes, feel yourself slipping inward. Let the outer world blur just enough that the inner one becomes vivid. Let your scene rise, not with intensity, but with familiarity. See what you see, hear what you hear, but feel it as now,
as here, as already done. Let that version of yourself walk ahead of you, and gently take your hand. Let them remind you, we are already home. And when doubt whispers, when the world shows you echoes of your former self, you simply return, not with panic, not with pressure, but with peace. For the state is always here. You never lost it, you simply forgot. To remember is to restore. Do you see now why SATS is not an act, but a dwelling, why it is less a technique, and more a remembering of your eternal place? You live there before you live it out. You assume before the world complies, and the assuming is enough. Be not deceived by appearances. They are old echoes, fading pictures on the walls of yesterday's belief. You need not fix them. You only need to remain in the new, to hold the pose of the fulfilled one, again and again, until it is no longer something you do, but something you are. And when you rest there long enough, when the feeling becomes familiar, and the scene becomes a backdrop to your days, manifestation becomes inevitable, not because you forced it, but because you became it, and the world simply plays its part. According to your faith be it unto you. Faith is not effort, it is identification, it is the quiet conviction that what you have imagined is already your experience, not because you have earned it, but because you have assumed it. So even now, as your eyes remain open, as life continues around you, feel the current beneath it all, that deep inner stillness, that quiet, unwavering knowing. Let your mind go soft, like water. Let your identity settle into the form of your desire, not with strain, but with surrender. And then let go, not of the vision, but of the striving. Hold the feeling, but release the effort. For when you carry the state, the rest is done unto you. But what happens when the old world resists? When the mirror delays? When the outer reflects not your assumption, but your memory of lack? That too is part of the mystery, and part of the law, and it reveals a deeper secret hidden within the silence. So when the mirror delays, when the outer world echoes back something less than your new assumption, what then? Do you collapse back into the old state? Do you question the law? Do you doubt the self you became in stillness? This is where many falter, for they forget the mirror is not immediate, it is loyal, but not always swift. It reflects not your desire, but your dwelling, and sometimes it reflects yesterday's dwelling, even as you stand in today's truth. But the wise one understands, the delay is not denial, the appearance of contradiction is not punishment, it is simply inertia, the old state still casting shadows as it fades, like twilight after sunset. The sun has moved, but the light lingers, and so does the echo of what you no longer are. This is the moment that reveals who you truly believe yourself to be, not when it's easy, but when it's silent, when nothing seems to move, yet within you, something remains unmoved. That quiet refusal to step out of the new state, that is the seed's protection, that is your faith. Faith is not a feeling, it is not excitement, it is not even belief in a particular outcome. Faith is identity held without apology, it is the unwavering dwelling in the unseen, while the seen plays catch-up. It is the rest in the end, even while the means look messy. You do not panic when the mirror shows the old self. You smile gently, and return to your inner seat. You know that the only real world is the one within. The outer is plastic, the inner is power. The outer is echo, the inner is origin. So you do not argue with reality. You revise it, not through force, but through assumption. And this is where the state akin to sleep becomes your daily sanctuary, not just before slumber, but in any moment the world attempts to distract you from who you are. Close your eyes now, if you feel cold, or leave them open, and turn inward anyway. Feel the softness of who you've become. See nothing, or see everything. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you know, that you feel it done, that the assumption of already having has wrapped itself around your breath, like a second skin. You may find yourself tempted to fix the outer, to explain, to control, to adjust the characters in your play. But remember, the director does not run on stage to rearrange the set. The director holds the vision, and the scene conforms. You are that director, and the scene is folding to your inner stillness. So walk through the world as if your wish were already fulfilled, not because you are pretending, but because you have seen. You have entered the imaginal scene, and sat down inside it. You have tasted the fruit of the new state. Now walk with that flavor on your tongue. When others speak from their doubt, you answer from your knowing. When circumstances shout their old song, you hear only the melody of fulfillment. And when the moment seems still, you do not beg the seed to sprout, you water it with faith. Hold fast the profession of your faith, without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. You are not holding fast to an idea, you are holding fast to yourself, your new self, the one born not of flesh, but of spirit, the one revealed in stillness and crowned in assumption. And if you fall, if you catch yourself reacting, doubting, slipping into the old skin, there is no shame. The law condemns no one, it only reflects. Simply return, return gently, return gently, return with love. The prodigal son did not lose his inheritance, he merely wandered. And when he remembered home, the feast was waiting. So too with you, the feast is prepared, the robe is ready, the ring of authority has never left your hand. All that is asked is that you remember who you are, that you return to the inner state, where it is already done. Remain here a little longer, feel the warmth of this knowing, let it soften every muscle, let it cradle your breath. You are not wishing, you are being, you are not hoping, you are remembering, and the mirror will soon forget the old and show you as you now are. But what of those desires that seem too large, too far, too long delayed? What of the dream that feels impossible, even in imagination? That question reveals the next door, one that few dare to open, but holds the most sacred key of all.
The dream that feels impossible, the one so vast it humbles your breath. This is not the mountain meant to crush you. It is the mountain meant to awaken you. When a desire arises that feels too large, too far, too golden to grasp, that is not a signal to retreat. It is the soul revealing its own vastness, disguised as longing. What you call impossible is simply unfamiliar, and what feels distant only reflects the distance between who you believe you are and who you truly are. The desire does not taunt you, it summons you. It does not arrive to remind you of what you lack, but to remind you of what you contain. If the law is true, and it is, then no desire enters the heart without its fulfillment already embedded within. The very moment you desire it, you possess it. For in imagination, all is now, all is here. The wish, the way, and the end are one. So if it feels too big, it is not the desire that must shrink, it is the self that must expand. And you do not expand through striving. You expand through stillness, through resting in the state that includes the fulfillment, even when the facts do not. Enter now into that sacred space, not with force, but with reverence. Lay down the measuring stick of the mind, which asks how, when, and if. Lay down the logic that has caged your miracles. The impossible cannot be reasoned into being. It must be assumed. This is where the state akin to sleep becomes the holy container for the infinite. You step into that quiet borderland, not to force belief, but to let all belief dissolve. You sink into the scene of already having, already being, already knowing, until the self begins to rise in stature, until the imagined becomes more intimate than the remembered. Feel it now, not as something you must conjure, but as something already present, already alive. The big dream, the impossible one, the one that once made your hands tremble. Let it touch you, let it hold you, not with the desperation of reaching, but with the sweetness of recognition. You remember now, you are not manifesting a thing, you are manifesting a self. You are not creating an outcome, you are revealing a new identity, and from that identity, the world must yield, it must bow, it must conform. The law plays no favorites, the principle does not discriminate between a coin and a kingdom. It responds to the feeling of being it. If you can feel natural in the scene, even for a breath, the roots are set. If you can touch the end and rest there, you have moved heaven and earth. And when the mind protests, when it whispers that you're being unrealistic, you smile. You return to the inner state, where the protest does not exist. You do not argue with shadows. You turn to the light. You let the feeling of already having wash over you like rain on thirsty ground. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. The Lord is your own wonderful imagination. To delight is to dwell, to make the imaginal real, to rest in it as though it were already given. For it is given the moment you assume it. You are not asking, you are remembering, you are not hoping, you are becoming, and the world will stretch itself to reflect your inner stance, no matter how impossible the dream once seemed. Let your inner scenes grow wild, Let them bloom beyond reason. Do not trim the vision to fit your past. Let the new self take full form in the silence. Sit in the end, and let it become your natural habitat, your spiritual address, your invisible home. And once you dwell there long enough, something irreversible occurs. You no longer visit the new state, you live there. And what once seemed too great for you now seems too small for the truth you've remembered. So when the impossible dream rises, bless it, embrace it, let it teach you who you truly are, for it has not come to test you, it has come to awaken you. And yet, what of those who feel nothing at all, who sit in stillness and find only silence, who imagine but feel no shift, no movement, no presence? This opens a deeper mystery, one hidden not in the feeling, but in the awareness beneath it. And what if in your quietest moments, you feel nothing at all, no tingle of certainty, no warmth of fulfillment, no breath of inner change, only blankness, silence, stillness? Does that mean the law is not working, that you have failed to enter the state? Or could it mean you have gone deeper than the mind can follow, into the formless womb, where feeling gives way to being? It is here that many turn back, mistaking the absence of sensation for the absence of power. But what they do not see is this: true creation begins not in intensity, but in surrender, not in emotion, but in identity. And identity is often born in stillness, too quiet to be measured. You do not need to feel electric or inspired. You do not need to see visions or tremble with emotion. You only need to become the one who has. The state akin to sleep is not about stimulation, it is about saturation, a soft soaking of your consciousness in the truth of already having, until that truth settles like oil upon the waters of your soul. Let the silence hold you. Let the blankness be a canvas, not a void. What the senses do not perceive, the spirit still knows. Just as the seed germinates in utter darkness, your assumption takes root in realms the mind cannot measure. Do not rush it, do not judge it, rest in it. So if you close your eyes and feel nothing, stay. If your inner scene fades, stay. If your body resists, if your thoughts drift, if the silence thickens, stay. For the staying itself is transformation. The quiet persistence in the unseen is how the soul learns its own language again. There is a difference between stillness and stagnation. Stillness is alive, it is receptive, it is the awareness beneath all movement. And when you return again and again to this inner stillness, when you dwell in it not to get, but simply to be, you step beyond the outer sign and enter the realm of causation. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. To stay the mind on the assumption, not by clenching it, but by resting in it, is to dwell in perfect peace. And peace, though quiet, is not empty, it is full of power. The deepest changes occur, not in fire, but in still water. So even when you feel nothing, no shift, no stirring, know that you are not failing, you are aligning, you are shedding the noisy hunger for proof and learning the calm authority of embodiment. You are moving from trying to being, and being does not beg, it does not plead for feedback from the world, it does not wait for signs to believe. It rests in the invisible as the only substance. It walks in silence as though the vision were already visible, because in truth it is. This is the hidden grace of the state akin to sleep. It teaches you to create from stillness, not from striving. It teaches you to trust the invisible more than the seen. It teaches you to walk by inner conviction, not outer evidence. You begin to realize that the real manifestation is not the thing, it is the self. The thing you once longed for becomes secondary to the self who already holds it. And that self, that quiet, dignified self, is born in moments of silence like these. Let your identity crystallize now, not through force, but through familiarity. Let the feeling of already having become the tone of your breath, the weight in your chest, the rhythm of your thought. Even if you cannot feel it sharply, trust that it is here, whispered beneath sensation, alive beneath form. And when the stillness deepens, when the imagination fades into silence, do not chase images, do not grasp at feeling, simply be the one who knows, the one who is. Let the new self hold you, let it become more real than the outer man who tries to perform. Let it become your home, for even in silence, the law is working, even in blankness, the word is becoming flesh. You are not waiting for a sign, you are resting in the seed, and the seed, once assumed, contains within it all it will ever need. But if you understood this fully, if you truly believed that imagination alone was reality, what would you dare to assume now? What would you claim, without apology, if you knew you could not fail? That question, quiet and holy, begins to stir the soil of your soul. If you knew beyond doubt that imagination alone was the source, if you felt deep in your marrow that the world is but your inner state turned outward, then what would you dare to assume tonight? Not what feels reasonable, not what fits your past, but what stirs you with holy awe, that quiet trembling desire that almost feels too sacred to speak aloud. Would you let yourself have it, not in time, but in being? This is the invitation of the state akin to sleep, to strip away the rules of logic and time, and to stand unveiled before your own divinity. Here, there is no scale of big or small, there is only is, and what you dare to accept as true in this state becomes truth. You are not casting spells, you are not persuading the universe, you are stepping into your eternal role as operant power, and the moment you accept this role, creation bends to your assumption, not someday, but now. So let yourself go there, not with strain, but with quiet authority. Choose the state that feels too good, too vast, too unlike the one you've known, and instead of reaching, rest. Instead of asking, assume. Let the imaginal act become as natural as memory, as familiar as your own breath. Let it be simple, see it, feel it, but more than that, become it. Slip into it like a second skin. Let the scene of your wish unfold within you, not as a performance, but as a homecoming. You are not an actor rehearsing a part, you are the author remembering the script you once wrote in eternity. Do not concern yourself with vivid detail. The power is not in the picture, but in the possession. If you can feel yourself into the new self, quietly, sincerely, it is enough. The seed does not need to be explained, it only needs to be planted, and you plant it by being it. You water it by dwelling in the end, over and over again, until it no longer feels like hope, but like truth. Let go of every rule the world taught you about what is possible. The world knows nothing of the law. It reflects, but it cannot initiate. It confirms, but it cannot create. Only consciousness creates. Only imagination brings the invisible into form. According to your faith be it unto you. And faith is simply the willingness to feel the unseen as the only real, to stand in the world of shadow, and yet see the world of light, to feel the thing hoped for as already possessed, until it no longer feels separate at all. You can do this now, right here, as you lie still, or as you sit in silence, or as you move through your day, with a secret fire burning within. You are not waiting for permission, you are not waiting for alignment. The state is the alignment, and you enter it the moment you accept it. Let that assumption wrap around you now. Let it rise not from effort, but from surrender, not from need, but from remembrance. You are simply coming back into agreement with the version of you who has always been whole, chosen, provided for, and free. And if the mind protests, let it. The mind is not your master, it is the servant of your assumption. It may argue with what is new, but the law does not respond to argument. It responds to identity, to feeling, to being. So become it now. Let the silence expand. Let the outer world dim, and within this softness, dare to claim the one you've always secretly known yourself to be, the one who walks in certainty, the one who lives from the end, the one who remembers. You need not sustain the scene for long. A flash of it, fully felt, leaves an imprint. The echo will ripple outward. The outer world will conform, not because you controlled it, but because you released it. And in this releasing, a deeper trust begins to form, a knowing that no matter how it comes, or when, or through whom, it must come, for it already has. The imaginal act was not a preview, it was the event itself. But this opens a mystery, far greater than technique or desire, a mystery few speak of, but all must face. What happens when you've assumed the end, but the world still shows you contradiction, when you've entered the state, and yet the echoes of the old persist? This too reveals something sacred, something only known by those who dare to remain when the world offers no sign. This is the path of those who walk by faith, and not by sight. This is the silent threshold where most turn back. But you are beginning to see that the outer delay is not opposition, it is a test of your dwelling. Will you stay in the new state, when the echoes of the old still whisper? Will you remain seated in the end, even as the shadows dance their last? This is the secret sanctuary of all true manifestation, not the moment you feel it once, but the quiet decision to remain, again and again, unmoved, unshaken, not because the world affirms it, but because you have. To remain is not to struggle, it is not to hold tightly with fear, it is to relax deeper into the feeling of the wish fulfilled,
until it becomes your resting place, your temple, your default. The state is no longer something you visit, it is the atmosphere you breathe. And when the mirror shows something contrary, you do not react, you remember, you return, not with effort, but with grace. The outer may flash with contradiction, but you know these are just shadows cast by old assumptions, still catching up to your new identity. You do not argue with a mirror, you do not plead with reflection, you simply remain in the light that casts it. It may feel like nothing is happening, but understand this, remaining is the work, remaining is the pruning of the old self. It is the soft persistence that turns identity into embodiment. When you no longer chase results, and simply abide in the knowing, you become the truth, and truth always reveals itself in form. Having done all, to stand, you have assumed the end, you have entered the state, and now the standing begins, not with tension, but with trust, not with striving, but with surrender. You are not waiting, you are allowing, you are not checking, you are resting. Let that rest take you even deeper now, let the silence stretch beyond time. The longer you remain in the state, the more the body forgets the old, the more the mind forgets the past, and the more reality itself forgets what you once were. You are not the one who desires, you are the one who has. Even in moments where nothing seems to change, the inner shift continues. Roots grow in darkness, foundations form in silence, and if you could see beneath appearances, you would witness worlds rearranging to match your inward stance. The law is exact, it does not fail, it only reflects. So when the appearance contradicts, you do not waver, you do not plead, you simply return. And if you must return 100 times, then 100 times you are reborn. Each return strengthens the new state, until you no longer leave it. You remain by embodying the end. Let every breath be a quiet nod to your assumption. Let every step be walked by the one who already is. You may not always feel it, but your choice to stay, to abide, to assume again and again, that is the golden key. Let your inner speech match your new state. Speak not to the world as one hoping, but as one remembering. If the scene changes, you remain unchanged. If the facts shout, you whisper back with calm certainty, it is done. There will come a moment when the old state no longer calls your name, when you wake, and the desire is no longer felt as desire, but as natural, familiar, already yours. That is when the shift is complete. The assumption has become identity, the seed has become the tree. But until that moment, rest here, walk gently in your knowing, live as the one who has. And when the world delays, let it. It cannot resist the law, it can only reflect. The power is not in what you see, it is in what you are willing to remain as, no matter what the mirror shows. That kind of faith, the kind that endures, is not passive, it is creative. It is the fire that forges the new man. And if you could hold that state for just a little longer, if you could walk through contradiction within a cloud, you would find yourself passing through the veil entirely. For what if remaining is not just about waiting, but about becoming something so real, so complete, that even time forgets to argue? And what if becoming is not a gradual climb, but a single breath, fully surrendered? What if the transformation does not happen slowly over days, but all at once, quietly, invisibly, in the stillness of a moment when you finally stop waiting and fully are? The world teaches delay, but spirit knows only now. And in this sacred pause, where you dwell without striving, the bridge is crossed, not with effort, with being. Remaining becomes becoming the instant you no longer waver, the instant you claim the state as your own, not in theory, but in feeling. There is no ceremony required, no perfect technique to master, only the willingness to not return to the old self, to not make decisions from lack, to not think from the problem, to no longer entertain even the whisper of absence. You can feel it now, the subtle tension releasing from your chest, the breath deepening, the mind softening its grip. This is the place from which all things are added unto you, not because you are finally worthy, but because you have stopped forgetting. You have stepped into the rhythm of being, and from here, the law begins its silent procession. Creation is finished. All states already exist, and when you assume one, you do not force it to happen, you simply tune to the version of self where it is already true. The state akin to sleep is not a ritual to get things. It is a door to step into who you truly are. You can enter it in the night, or in the middle of the day. You can touch it with eyes closed, or eyes open. It is not bound to time. It is bound only to sincerity. The feeling that you are already it, that you have returned to the version of yourself where the desire has been fulfilled. This is the key that turns the lock, and the world, for all its noise and resistance, cannot deny that key. It must follow. It must echo, not because it understands, but because it is your reflection, and the reflection has no life of its own. This is why you do not chase signs. You do not demand evidence. You do not watch the world for confirmation. You watch within, and when the inner world is solid, the outer must rearrange, not out of magic, but out of law. Law so pure, so unbending, it responds without hesitation to every assumption held with faith. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is not a poetic comfort. It is the nature of imagination. Before the words are spoken, the state is accepted, and because the state is the seed, the harvest is assured. Feel into this now, not as a task, but as a return. Remember the scene, the imaginal act, that feels most natural to you, the one where your desire is already realized. See it softly, not as a performance, but as a glimpse of your truest self, and now breathe in its feeling. What does the air smell like there? How does your body carry itself? What conversations are already behind you, already lived, already celebrated? Rest in that energy, saturate your being with it. You are not watching a future. You are sitting inside a memory that belongs to the version of you who knows. Remain there, even when thoughts arise, even when the outer world shouts its delay. You are not in that world anymore. You have moved, and you need no permission to remain in the end. You are the author and the actor, the pen and the page. And slowly, without warning, you will notice your tone has changed. Your posture, your thoughts, your expectations, they will begin to lean toward the assumption, without needing proof. And that, more than any scene, is the true sign of movement. When you expect without effort, when you assume without needing to remind yourself. This is the art of living in the end, not once, but always. It begins in the state akin to sleep, but it matures into a way of being, a rhythm of consciousness, a quiet unfolding where nothing is chased, yet everything arrives. And still, a deeper mystery remains, one that few approach, but all must one day face. What is the self that assumes? Who is this I that chooses and becomes? For to truly master the law, you must go beyond desire itself, and enter the remembrance of your own divine origin. And so the question emerges like a quiet flame: who is the one that assumes? Who is this silent self behind the scenes, choosing states, feeling them into form, living realities before they appear? If the outer man is merely a mask, a costume stitched from habit and memory, then who wears it? Who breathes life into the imaginal act, and calls the invisible into shape? This is not a question to be answered with words, it is one to be felt, for you are not merely the thinker of thoughts, you are the awareness behind the thought, the stillness before the image. You are the one who moves from state to state, not by effort, but by decision. You are not your past, not your story, not even your personality. You are the operant power, pure, invisible, eternal. To know this is to be free, for when you truly understand that your I am is the root of all things, you no longer fear delay, you no longer plead with circumstance. You know that identity is cause, and all else is echo, and from that knowing, you choose not out of desperation, but out of remembrance. In the state akin to sleep, this truth is easiest to taste, for there, the mind quiets, the roles dissolve, and what remains is the light of pure being, untouched by form, but pregnant with it. This is why the ancients spoke in symbols of gardens, of seeds, of hidden treasure. They knew the outer world is the harvest of what you water in the silence. To assume is to become, and to become is to remember, not to create from lack, but to embody the state where nothing is missing. You become the one who already is, and the world, like clay, takes the shape of your unseen hands. When you say I am healthy, I am loved, I am provided for, you are not affirming in hope, you are declaring in truth. You are calling the unseen self into visibility. And if the feeling is faint, if the scene feels distant, you need not panic, for even the softest whisper, when sustained, becomes thunder in the world of form. This I am within you is holy. It is not a thought, it is not your name, it is the name of God, buried beneath identity. It does not beg, it does not strive, it simply is, and what it assumes, it becomes. This is the mystery hidden in the words, "Before Abraham was I am." Feel that now, not as a concept, but as a presence. Close your eyes, or let them rest heavy. Breathe with no agenda. Let your body dissolve into softness, and from this still awareness, let the new self arise. Not the one who hopes, but the one who knows, the one who has, the one who is. You may speak no words, yet something moves. You may visualize nothing, yet something becomes. For the law responds not to form, but to consciousness. You are not measured by technique, but by identity. Who are you willing to be, even when the world has not yet confirmed it? In SATS, this willingness becomes clear. You are no longer seeking a change, you are the change. And when that self becomes familiar, the outer world must comply. It is not a matter of will, it is the inevitability of the mirror. And when you return to waking, you carry that self with you. You walk in the assumption not as an effort, but as your natural stance. You speak from the end, you move from the end, you breathe from the end, because the end lives within you now, and in time, or outside of time, the form appears, not as reward, but as reflection, not as validation, but as evidence that the law never fails. The outer is the echo, the inner is the source. So ask again, gently, from the silence behind thought, who am I willing to be now? And let the answer arise not from memory, but from your highest knowing. There is one more door to approach, one more veil to lift. For once the self is known, and the state is assumed, there remains one final practice that seals the new identity into permanence, not through repetition, but through sacred revision. And its power, once understood, rewrites not only your future, but your past.
If the future bends to assumption, what then of the past? Can memory be moved, rewritten, reshaped, just as easily as desire can be fulfilled? This is the mystery of revision, the forgotten alchemy of time. And once it is seen, it changes not just what is to come, but what has already been. For there is no was to the creative power of awareness. There is only I am. The world tells you the past is fixed, that what has happened must remain. But the deeper law whispers something different. That memory too is clay, that feeling is the thread upon which time is strung, and that the moment you change how it lives within you, the outer fabric begins to unravel and reweave itself in harmony. This is not imagination as escape, it is imagination as authorship, for you are not the victim of what was, you are the operant power even there. If consciousness is the only reality, then your inner acceptance of any version of an event becomes the seed of a new outcome, retroactive, present, and unfolding. You need not deny the past, you need only revise it, not with guilt, not with resistance, but with quiet authority. You revisit the scene not to relive pain, but to restore power. You enter the imaginal space, soften the memory, and insert the new outcome, gently, lovingly, as one who rewrites a letter never sent. Feel into this now, something from earlier today, or from a distant page of memory, some conversation, event, or moment that left a mark of lack or loss. Close your eyes, not to escape it, but to re-enter it as creator. Step back into the scene, not as it was, but as you choose it to be. Let the tones change, let the dialogue soften, let the outcome shift. Perhaps they said the thing you longed to hear. Perhaps the door opened instead of closing. Perhaps you smiled instead of flinched. Whatever it is, see it now as you wish it had been, and feel the release. Feel the old chain breaking, and the new thread being woven, not into the past alone, but into who you are now. This is the holy secret. What you revise in memory alters what you believe about self, and what you believe about self alters the state you occupy, and the state you occupy shapes the entire world you walk through. Let the weak say, I am strong, not because they wish it, but because by saying it, they enter the state of strength, and strength then becomes truth. So too with revision. You do not cling to what occurred. You claim what aligns. You choose what empowers, and the law responds. You are not deceiving yourself. You are setting yourself free. For what matters is not what happened, but what you carry. And you carry not the facts of the past, but the feeling of it. Change the feeling, and the fact dissolves into the greater pattern you have chosen to wear. Let this become your nightly ritual. As you descend into that golden state akin to sleep, survey the day not to judge, but to transform. What could have gone differently? What moment still echoes with dissonance? Step into it, feel it anew, rewrite it with love, and as you fall asleep, let the revised scene become your final impression. For the subconscious accepts whatever state is alive in you as you drift, and what it accepts, it must externalize. There is no fiction to it. There is only feeling, and what you feel accepted as true becomes truth in your world. So begin to see memory not as stone, but as smoke, easily shaped, easily reimagined, easily replaced. You are not beholden to what once was. You are beholden only to what you choose now. And as you revise the past, you cleanse the present. You prepare the soil for new fruit. You rise not only with a new dream, but with a new history to support it. For the inner self, once changed, alters everything, forward and back. Yet even this points to something higher still. For if you can revise your past, and choose your future, and rest in the end, what remains untouched by time? Beneath all stories, all states, all dreams, that eternal stillness, that formless awareness, which neither seeks nor asks, only is, and to dwell there, even for a breath, is to taste the source of all creation. Beneath every scene revised, beneath every future claimed, there is a silence untouched by desire or memory, a stillness not concerned with having or becoming, because it already holds all things. This is the I am, before words, the awareness before form, the deep formless self that knows without needing to ask. And when you rest here, in the hush beneath all creation, you do not manifest from effort, you manifest from union. You've touched this place before, perhaps without knowing, a moment between thoughts, a breath so soft, it felt like the world paused, that sense of being without agenda. It is not empty, it is whole, and it is from here that the state akin to sleep draws its true power, not from the image, not from the feeling, but from the awareness that chooses them. To know yourself as awareness is to slip behind the veil of appearances. It is to no longer mistake the mirror for the face. You watch the scene unfold, yes, but you do not cling. You create and release. You feel and let be. You rest in the center of your own being, knowing that all things flow from the state you occupy, and that the states are yours to choose. This is where SATS reveals its sacred simplicity. It is not a technique to earn what you lack. It is a homecoming, a return to the center, where assumption and creation are one and the same. You are not drawing something toward you, you are radiating it, and the outer world adjusts not because you forced it, but because it must match the radiance within. Let yourself enter that stillness now. Close your eyes, if you wish, or simply let your focus soften. Imagine the edges of your body blurring, your name loosening from your shoulders, your story dissolving like ink in water. There is no effort here, no timeline, only the gentle awareness that you are. And from that awareness, you may choose, not as one begging the sky, but as one knowing they stand in the image of the Creator. You assume not with tension, but with trust. You live not from the evidence of senses, but from the authority of consciousness. The scene rises in you, the feeling takes root, and in that moment, the unseen becomes law. Be still, and know that I am God. Not be loud, not be urgent, be still. And in that stillness, the knowing comes not as information, but as being. You are not praying to something outside yourself. You are awakening to the truth within you. The I am that precedes all form. The I am that chooses form. And so the imaginal act becomes holy, not because of the scene you choose, but because of the place you choose it from. When it is born of union with your formless self, it carries no doubt. You are not trying to convince. You are simply remembering. Let this remembrance become your rest. Let the state akin to sleep no longer be a moment of practice, but a rhythm of being, a soft unfolding throughout your day. You need not always close your eyes to feel the truth. You need only close the door of outer distraction and return inward, where the kingdom lives. You are not learning to manifest. You are remembering that you always were. Every state you've ever entered was by assumption, conscious or not. Every reality you've walked through was born of what you accepted as true. Now you choose with intention, with stillness, with grace. And as you continue to dwell in this soft awareness, something begins to shift, not just in your world, but in yourself. You no longer identify with the one who wants. You no longer search for signs. You are the sign. You are the one who has. You are the embodiment of the end fulfilled. And what happens when the state becomes so natural, so familiar, that you forget you ever wanted it. When desire fades, not because it was denied, but because it has been assumed so completely that the world must comply, that is when the harvest comes, quietly, faithfully, like dawn breaking behind closed eyes. But even then, something deeper is calling still, beyond all states, all scenes, all fulfillment, the call to dwell not only in assumption, but in oneness, to no longer use imagination, but to become it, to merge with the source that imagined you, to become what once guided you as the final unveiling, where imagination no longer feels like a tool, but your very breath, where the scenes you once constructed with care, now arise on their own, effortless and luminous, flowing not from desire, but from union. Here you no longer ask, how do I imagine correctly? Instead you realize, you are the imagination, the eternal dreamer, dreaming both the dream and the one within it. This shift is subtle. It does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives like the soft hush that precedes dawn, when light has not yet broken, but the darkness begins to glow. You feel yourself loosening from the need to manifest, not because you've grown disinterested, but because you now dwell in the fullness from which all manifestations rise. You are no longer the one seeking to enter the state. You are the state, and the world bends to your stillness, not as a reward, but as a reflection. The outer becomes so quiet, so obedient, that you no longer marvel when it changes. You expect it, you bless it, but your joy is no longer tied to it. The center of your being has shifted inward, where it always was. In this place, the state akin to sleep becomes not a practice, but your posture. You live in the world with the ease of one who no longer fears contradiction. The mirror may flash its old images, but you do not flinch, you do not plead, you remain. You remain as the assumed self, not occasionally, but continually, and that constancy becomes your new creation. You become sensitive not to facts, but to inner tone. You recognize when you've left the state, not because something outside has changed, but because the fragrance of your self-concept has shifted. You catch it, you pause, and you return, and each return deepens the remembering. Imagination and reality dissolve into one rhythm. The bridge of incidents becomes smoother. The line between inner and outer fades. What once felt like technique now feels like nature. You no longer use SAT. You live from it. The quiet threshold between worlds becomes your dwelling place. Not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Spirit here is not some force outside of you. It is your own creative awareness, gently assuming, lovingly creating, never hurried, never unsure. The more you rest in it, the more the outer world loses its grip. You are not its prisoner, you are its maker. Let yourself linger here, not to get anything, not to perfect any scene, just to be softly, silently, as the one who knows, as the one who already is. And in this rest, new desires may rise, but they will feel different now, lighter, truer, less like hunger, more like gentle remembering, not something to chase, but something to welcome. Even your questions soften, even your prayers change shape. You no longer speak to some distant God, you speak from the I am within, and in that union, your word becomes the word, the scene becomes flesh, the assumption becomes form, and when others ask, you do not preach, you radiate. Your presence speaks more clearly than your instructions. You do not need to convince, you are the living testimony, quiet, peaceful, unshaken, dwelling in the end without effort. That is the mark of one who has become the state. And still the invitation deepens, for what if even the assumption of being a specific self could fall away? What if the final surrender was not to a desire fulfilled, but to the one who needs no fulfillment, the source, the light, the awareness untouched by names or roles? What if the state akin to sleep is not the end of manifestation, but the beginning of awakening? What if the final rest was not in the fulfillment of desire, but in the dissolving of desire altogether? Not because it was denied, but because it has been outgrown, like a childhood dream remembered with love, no longer needed to feel whole. The more deeply you dwell in the state akin to sleep, the more you discover a silence beyond assumption, a silence so complete it no longer calls for anything to change. You thought you came here to manifest something specific, a home, a healing, a love, but in returning again and again to the imaginal act, to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you were unknowingly peeling away layers of identity. And now, without fanfare,
you find yourself not only living in the end, but living beyond it. Still, whole, awake, you are beginning to realize that the power you have used to imagine a better future is the same power that imagined you. The awareness that constructs scenes, selects states, and reclaims memory is not a fragment, it is the totality. And in this totality, you are not the one who seeks, you are the source from which all seeking flows. This is the sacred paradox, that you may fully assume your desire, live in the end with joy, revise the past with precision, and manifest wonders, and yet still, beneath it all rests something more ancient, something untouched, the stillness behind the images, the I am before the identity. It is here, in the quiet center of the state, akin to sleep, that this deeper remembrance begins to bloom. You feel the pull to release even the role of the operant power, not to forget the law, but to merge with the lawgiver, not to manifest endlessly, but to rest in the one who is. This is not withdrawal, it is fulfillment, it is the turning inward, so completely, that all states become garments you may wear, or lay aside at will. The house is not the self, the job is not the self, the body, the name, the story, these are shadows playing upon the veil. Beautiful, yes, but not the source of your light. And here, even the state akin to sleep becomes transparent. You enter it not to become, but to be. You do not form the scene forms itself around your presence. You do not reach for feeling, the feeling arises from the stillness that needs nothing to prove itself. Let yourself feel this now, not a scene, not a story, but the simple awareness of being. Let the breath slow, let the thoughts fall like leaves on still water. You do not need to carry anything here, not even the assumption, just this presence, just this light. And yet paradoxically, from this formless stillness, form springs forth more effortlessly than ever. Desires come as gentle waves, and you fulfill them not to become more, but to express what already is. You are no longer manifesting to fix, you are manifesting to play. This is the joy of creation without bondage, the life of the awakened dreamer, who moves through states like clouds, drifting through sky. Nothing is clung to, nothing is resisted, all is welcomed, all is reflection. Before they call, I will answer. Before you ask, it is done. Because from this awareness, there is no separation between the desire and the fulfillment. The state and the source are one, and the outer world begins to arrive not in response to effort, but as a natural unfolding of your inner stillness. You begin to notice the quality of your days changing. More ease, more softness, less need to push, less compulsion to control. You feel yourself carried, not by chance, but by rhythm, by law, by grace. And the beauty is, this stillness is always here, whether you are lying in bed or walking through noise, whether you are feeling deeply or feeling nothing at all. It waits, it watches, it is. What remains now is not more effort, not more doing, but the simplest of questions, asked without urgency, without striving. What would it feel like to be the awareness itself? Not the imaginer, but the imagination. Not the one entering the state, but the very silence from which all states arise. To be the imagination itself, not the thinker with an aim, not the seeker of result, but the very quiet from which all pictures rise, is to remember what no language can fully contain. For in that stillness, there is no separation left to speak of. No longer do you sit before a door and ask to enter. You realize you are the door, the dreamer, and the dream, the word and the womb. And yet the simplicity of this truth is often overlooked. We are trained to identify with effort, to measure progress by what we can grasp. But in the silence of the state, akin to sleep, you begin to sense a deeper rhythm, one that moves not by effort, but by harmony. You are not summoning scenes, you are allowing truth to reveal itself, as fragrance reveals the rose. You no longer seek results to confirm who you are, you let who you are create the results. And what flows from this state is not born of control, but of alignment. The assumption is not something you use, it is something you are. Assumption becomes natural, as breathing is natural, as stillness is natural, as love is natural. Here you begin to taste what it is to live without resistance, not passive, not indifferent, but open, soft, unshaken. When you embody a new state, the world around you rearranges itself with quiet precision. No force, no strain, just the gentle turning of mirrors, aligning to reflect your new self. and yet there is a presence beneath even this, a presence that assumes without assuming, creates without imagining, fulfills without form. It is the presence that watched your every desire rise, not with judgment, but with knowing. It is the awareness that needs no thing, no name, no direction, and yet through it, all things come. Be still for a moment now. Let your identity dissolve, not into confusion, but into clarity. Let go of I want. Let go of I am this, or I am that. Let go even of the scene you have lovingly crafted, and feel what remains, that spaciousness, that presence, that eternal witness, who never moves, yet through whom all movement occurs. It watches your states shift. It watches your forms evolve. It watches your assumptions plant themselves like seeds and burst into bloom. And yet it is never caught in any one of them. It is always free. This is the self behind the state, the light behind the story, the imagination that imagined the imaginer. And the more you return to this awareness, even briefly, even silently, the more your manifestations become effortless, because you are no longer trying to get anything. You are simply letting the one who has flow into form. In him we live, and move, and have our being. That him is not outside you. It is your own divine imagination, your eternal I am, your unseen root. And as you rest in it, you remember, all assumptions are garments, all desires are expressions, but the wearer, the source, remains untouched, unstirred, whole. And it is from this wholeness that the most profound creations come, not from need, not from lack, but from the joy of expression. A painter who does not paint to prove, but to reveal. A singer who does not sing to be heard, but because the song is. So feel the gentle invitation now, not to do more, not to perfect technique, but to surrender even deeper into the being that precedes all doing. Let yourself drift, not into unconsciousness, but into pure awareness, not asleep, and not fully awake, just resting in the holy middle, where nothing is missing. Let the outer world blur, let even the inner scene soften, and breathe, as the awareness itself, not the one imagining, but the field in which all images rise and fall like waves returning to ocean. And if this feels like a mystery too vast to hold, good, for that is what you are. You are not the result, you are not the timeline, you are not the echo of yesterday's belief, you are the living awareness, from which all reality flows. But what if this was always true? What if even your greatest desires were only whispers from this deeper self, calling you, not to acquire, but to awaken? What would happen if you answered that call now, and never turned back? And if you never turned back, if you answered that call not with effort, but with stillness, what would unfold? What would arise from a life no longer lived through the lens of lack, but through the quiet joy of remembrance? For every desire, no matter how outward it seems, is truly a whisper from the deeper self, a golden echo, inviting you to know yourself as more than the one who wants, to know yourself as the one who is. The world teaches you to chase the shadow, to seek the outer shape of fulfillment, but the law invites you inward, to find within the state, akin to sleep, not only your desired condition, but the eternal self that chose the desire, the self that never lost anything, the self that never needed to get, but only to accept. To live from this knowing is not to abandon the dream, it is to live it without fear. It is to dwell in the end with such certainty, such peace, that even the timing becomes irrelevant. You no longer ask when, you no longer look for signs, you simply are, and the world, shaped by your stillness, blooms around you like a garden warmed by unseen light. Let yourself feel that now, not the scene, not the outcome, just the being, the quiet hum of I am within your breath. No striving, no tension, just presence. The imaginal act is sacred, not because of what it brings, but because of what it reveals. Every time you enter the state akin to sleep, whether in silence or vision, whether with feeling or in stillness, you touch the wellspring of creation itself. You are not moving pieces. You are not fixing reality. You are letting the eternal become visible. It may begin with a desire, a wish fulfilled in imagination, but as you remain in the state, not once, but as a way of life, the desire gives way to identity, and identity gives way to divinity. You are no longer manifesting a better version of yourself. You are remembering the self that was never less. I and my Father are one, said the Christ within. This was not metaphor, it was math. It was the revelation of what happens when the human self returns again and again to the divine imagination, until there is no gap left between the two, only union. You no longer see your scenes as tools. You see them as reflections of your nature. You assume not to attract, but to express. You visualize not to grasp, but to commune. And in this way, assumption becomes worship, a quiet holy declaration. I know who I am, and because you know, you rest. You do not hurry the seed. You do not search the soil for proof. You breathe in the end, and the end breathes you. And in time, yes, even in time, the form appears, but by then it matters less, for the real treasure is not the thing, but the state that birthed it. Even now, feel the state calling you home, perhaps not to a new condition, but to the self that dwells before and beneath all conditions, that silent I am, which needs no scene to prove itself, no voice to announce itself, no movement to reveal itself. You are that stillness, that light, that unformed truth behind every form, and in the state akin to sleep, you rest not only in a new assumption, but in that formless self, that gives all assumptions their power, and from that resting place, something beautiful stirs, not the next desire, but the realization that all desires, when traced to their root, are calling you to one thing, to dwell in the fullness of who you already are. But what if that fullness was not something to reach, but something to remember in this very moment? What if even now, the entire journey, the scenes, the feelings, the revisions, the assumptions, was gently leading you not just to manifestation, but to yourself?
What if every scene you've entered, every breath you've slowed beneath the veil of sleep, was never just about the outer change, but about bringing you face to face with the one who watches within? Not the one who wishes, not the one who waits, but the one who is, untouched, eternal, silent behind every movement of mind. This is the quiet gift of the state akin to sleep, not merely the power to shift the world, but the invitation to remember who is dreaming it. You do not become powerful in SATS. You realize you always were. You do not draw something new into your life. You let go of the false idea that it was ever missing. For what the world calls creation is, in truth, revelation. And what the world calls delay is only the echo of a forgotten assumption still playing out its final notes. Here in this drowsy threshold, where thought begins to blur and images rise like mist, you touch the root of all transformation, not by doing, but by being still. And in that stillness, you remember it was never about making something happen. It was about surrendering to what already is, waiting for your willingness to claim it. You do not fight the old. You forget it. You do not argue with the outer. You sink beneath it. And what you assume in this silent descent, without strain, without urgency, rises to meet you in the world, clothed in facts, shaped by faith. Let yourself feel that descent now, not into sleep, but into self. Let the body relax, the breath lengthen, the surface mind grow dim, and in that sacred pause, let the assumption settle, not as something added, but as something remembered, not an effort, but a return. The wish fulfilled is not something far. It is nearer than hands, closer than breath. It does not come with noise. It comes with recognition. You see it inwardly, not as a hope, but as a fact, and the outer world has no choice but to comply. According to your faith, be it unto you. And faith, in its purest form, is not a feeling. It is identity. It is knowing. It is walking as the one who already has, even when the senses still tell the story of the one who lacks. It is choosing the unseen, not because it's proven, but because it is yours. And when that faith becomes familiar, when the imaginal scene feels like memory, when the breath of your new self becomes natural, then the bridge begins to form. Not in chaos, not in effort, but in quiet orchestration. A phone call, a decision made by someone you've never met. These are not accidents. These are the movements of the outer world dancing to the rhythm of your inner assumption, the invisible made visible. And yet, even as it unfolds, you no longer cling to the outcome. Why? Because you have already become it. You no longer seek the proof. You are the proof. Your peace speaks louder than your plan. Your stillness carries more power than your strategy. You may revise. You may imagine. You may dwell in the scene. But beneath all of it, you are no longer the one searching. You are the one who knows. and that knowing is what turns shadows into substance, thoughts into form, dreams into days. So rest here, not for answers, not for guidance, but to abide in your true nature. Feel how soft it becomes, this life of assumption, how light, how effortless. Not because you've mastered a method, but because you've surrendered the old self that doubted. And as you feel the new self settle into place, like breath settling into lungs, ask yourself, not from lack, but from love, what would it feel like to stay here? What would life become if this new state was not a moment, but your home? What would life become if this new state was not a fleeting vision, but your resting place? If you no longer dipped into the end only when you felt inspired, but lived there, breathed there, made it your dwelling in thought and tone and gesture? What happens when the imaginal act ceases to be an exercise, and becomes identity? The world around you would not change first, you would, and because the world has no life of its own, it must follow. But this change is not loud, it is not dramatic, it moves like a shifting current, beneath still waters. The smile that comes without cause, the calm in the face of contradiction, the sudden lack of interest in explaining yourself. You are not performing a new self, you are wearing it. This is the real secret of remaining, not to force an assumption into place, but to gently inhabit it, until it feels like the only truth you've ever known. You rehearse not because you lack, but because you are remembering. You return to the scene, not out of hunger, but because it is home. And with every silent re-entry into the state, your entire world begins to forget the old script, and learn the rhythm of the new. And yet this rhythm is not hurried. The one who truly lives in the end no longer demands speed. There is no impatience, there is no when, there is only the unfolding, only the quiet trust that what has been assumed must become seen, not by will, but by law. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, and when that substance settles in you, when the tone of your inner world matches the texture of your desire fulfilled, then even time bows, even form listens, even mountains yield. This is what happens when the state akin to sleep becomes your way of being, not just your nightly practice. You begin to walk differently, you listen differently. Your attention shifts from surface noise to the atmosphere of feeling beneath it all, and it is there, in that felt assumption, that the seed is constantly planted. You realize there is nothing you need to get, only something you need to be, and you begin to guard that being, not out of fear, but out of love. You do not let conversations pull you back into old roles. You do not let facts convince you out of faith. You no longer ask, is it working? Because the question itself belongs to a former self you no longer wear. And as that former self falls away, so do the delays, the resistance, the hesitation. The world catches up not because you pushed it, but because you no longer contradicted your own assumption. The mirror becomes loyal. The moment your gaze becomes steady, let that steadiness wash over you now. Let it be quiet. Let it be deep. You are not performing for life. You are not hoping the universe hears you. You are the universe speaking. You are imagination clothed in flesh, the image of the unseen, and every scene that lives in your heart long enough must, by law, become form. And when the form comes, you will not marvel. You will smile. You will nod. You will say, of course, how could it have been otherwise? And then you will keep walking, for creation is not an end, it is a movement, a spiral, a holy rhythm you are now learning to hear. But even in this rhythm, something else begins to rise, something softer than assumption, older than desire, a peace not born of what's coming, but of what always was. And it asks no questions, it makes no demands, it simply says, stay here, stay in the knowing, stay in the stillness, stay in the state, not to get what you want, but because this is who you are. And if this is who you are, if this peace, this power, this presence is now your resting place, what else is possible from here? What miracles unfold not from effort, but from identity? What happens when you stop using the law and become it? What happens when you stop using the law and become it? When the teachings are no longer concepts you study, but living patterns you breathe. When the bridge of incidents doesn't surprise you anymore, because you walk through life as one who has already arrived. This is the quiet turning point, where the outer world becomes weightless, and the inner world becomes sovereign. You no longer visit the state. You no longer coax yourself into the end. You simply live there, and living there you do not strain to see results. You look out upon the world, and recognize its movements as old echoes, past assumptions unfolding like faded songs. But you now dwell in a new melody, one that needs no proving, one that sings itself through you. To become the law is to see yourself not as the one who applies it, but as the source from which it flows. It is to realize that imagination is not something you use, it is what you are. And once this is understood, not mentally, but in your stillest knowing, you discover that every moment becomes sacred, every thought becomes a seed, every feeling becomes form. In this sacred condition, you carry no urgency. The desire is felt, yes, but without need. You no longer cling to the vision. You know its outcome is already written in the rhythm of your inner atmosphere. You are not becoming, you have already become. And so the manifestation is no longer your focus. Your focus is simply abiding. This is the way the world begins to turn around you. It does not respond to want. It responds to embodiment. It follows your inner tone with precise fidelity. And when you live in the end, not just for 5 minutes in the night, but in breath, in word, in posture, the end rushes to meet you with quiet certainty. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. The table is not prepared after the conflict, but in the midst of it. The outer world does not need to agree with your new self for it to be true. The world does not lead you to the state leads the world. Feel this authority now, not loud, not forced, but still and radiant. The kind of authority that does not shout because it never doubts. The kind that rests even as the world rearranges, because it knows its assumption is law. You are no longer waiting for evidence. You are breathing as evidence. And as you carry this inner peace, you begin to see how many identities you once wore were borrowed. Assumptions made in sleep, garments of thought passed down from fear or repetition. But now in this sacred awareness, you begin to choose, not out of reaction, but out of remembrance. You begin to feel your future not as distance, but as memory. You feel it with the same certainty you feel your name. It becomes natural to walk into rooms as though the wish has already happened, to speak as though the answer is behind every word, to love as though nothing has ever been withheld. This is the law fulfilled in you, not because you tried harder, but because you surrendered deeper. You gave up striving and returned to the garden of identity, where all states already exist, and you picked the one that was yours from the beginning. And the state akin to sleep, that sacred borderland, becomes your sanctuary. You enter it again and again, not to get, but to be reminded. Each night, you return to the feeling of already having. Each morning you rise with that vibration still resting in your bones. And slowly the line between imagination and reality vanishes. You are not hoping, you are remembering. And every moment lived in that remembrance becomes a doorway. Every breath becomes a command, not shouted, not declared, simply known. But what if this remembering, this sacred dwelling in the end, was not just for the fulfillment of personal desire, but for the healing of everything you touch? What if your assumption didn't just change your world, but the world? What if the self you assume in silence reshaped more than just your days? What if the stillness you carry, this sacred remembering of the end, did not only draw forth your personal dream, but poured light into every life you touched? What if the law, once lived fully, did not stop at you, but rippled outward, reweaving the fabric of reality itself? This is the unseen power of remaining. Not only that your world must shift to reflect your assumption, but that the world, your world, the world of others, begins to soften in your presence. You no longer wish for things only on your behalf. You become a resting place for peace, a point of quiet radiance, where others begin to remember who they are, simply because you are no longer doubting who you are. To dwell in the end is to carry a field, and that field is felt. Others may not know what has changed, but they feel it. In your silence, in your gaze, in the way you no longer beg life for answers, but bless it for what already is. You become the evidence of what is possible, not because you speak of the law, but because you embody it. An embodiment, unlike persuasion, cannot be resisted. It invites, it mirrors, it heals. This is the gift hidden in the state akin to sleep. For each time you rest into the fulfilled desire, each time you allow yourself to drift into the feeling of already having, you are not just planting a seed for your tomorrow, you are cleansing the atmosphere of consciousness itself. You are lifting the whole. Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. You are not only transforming your conditions, you are illuminating possibility. And you do this not through teaching, not through effort, but by being.
quietly, lovingly, unshakably. You begin to notice that even conversations shift, that arguments soften before they begin, that opportunities arrive not just for you, but for those near you. Why? Because you have become an open door, a gate through which others can glimpse their own divinity. You have become a vessel through which imagination speaks its quiet yes. And this is why the law is not cold, it is not mechanical, it is alive, it is love, wearing the garments of thought. And when you use it rightly, with feeling, with sincerity, with gentleness, you are not bending reality to your will, you are aligning with the will that dreamed you into being. Let yourself feel this now, not just as power, but as grace, not just as ability, but as responsibility. You are shaping reality, not by force, not by wish, but by assuming, over and over again, that the best is not only possible, it is present. You are not hoping for healing, you are becoming the healed self. You are not wishing for abundance, you are walking in the tone of abundance realized. And because you are, those who cross your path feel the vibration before they hear your words. They sense the reality you carry, and should they ask how you did it, what you did, you will answer not with steps, but with stillness. You will remind them of their power, not by teaching them new thoughts, but by embodying a new identity so completely, that they cannot help but remember their own. This is the quiet miracle of SATS, that as you fall into the scene of your fulfilled desire, as you let the assumption become your pillow, you are doing more than manifesting, you are radiating. And this light, born in the dark stillness between waking and sleep, reaches further than you may ever know. Let that light expand now. Let your assumption be wide enough to hold not just your joy, but joy for others, not just your vision, but healing for all. Assume that the world is blooming. Assume that every soul is remembering. Assume that your very being changes things. And then rest, not with pride, but with peace, not with urgency, but with reverence. You do not need to convince anyone. You need only remain. Stay in the end. And from that holy posture, all things shall be drawn unto you. But what would it mean to let go of even the need to see results? To live in the end so completely, so quietly, that whether or not it arrives no longer matters, because you already are the one it belonged to. What would it mean to love the state itself more than the thing it brings? What would it mean to love the state more than the thing it brings? To treasure the feeling of the wish fulfilled not for its outcome, but for the intimacy it restores between you and your divine self. This is the hidden turning, where manifestation ceases to be a chase, and becomes a communion. You are no longer drawn to the scene by what it gives. You are drawn because it reveals who you are. You close your eyes not to escape, but to return. You enter the state akin to sleep, not to fix a problem, but to remember your place in the eternal. It is not desire that drives you now, it is devotion, a sacred devotion to the truth of I am, clothed in the gentle rhythm of assumption. And the moment you no longer require the world to prove your fulfillment, it begins to mirror it effortlessly. For the one who has no more need to receive, is finally ready to receive all. The hands you once extended in yearning are now folded in peace. The mind that once asked how, is now quiet in the simplicity of already done. This is why the state is holy. It is not a tool for achievement. It is the inner temple of identity. It is the ark in which your seed of awareness rests until the flood of time delivers it to shore. And when you dwell in the state long enough, when you live there with reverence, you begin to see even the desire itself was never separate from you. It was simply the echo of your truest self, calling you home. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. The Lord is imagination, and the delight is in union, not striving, not testing, but resting in that sacred place where imagination and identity are one. And here is where the peace grows deeper. You are no longer attached to the form. You are in love with the state, the feeling of being the one who already has, already knows, already is. And in that love, the world takes shape around you, not as a test, but as a response. You walk through your day as though the scene had already played out. You carry the invisible crown not to be seen, but because it fits. And life, gentle and precise, arranges itself accordingly. You don't need to make it happen. You only need to be. This being is not passive. It is creative. It is magnetic. It does not force, yet it draws. It does not push, yet it moves all things. And when you learn to love the being more than the becoming, you discover that that becoming was always an illusion. The end has already been declared. You are simply catching up to it in time. And SATS, that quiet threshold between waking and sleep, is the sacred chamber where you re-enter the truth, not to gain it, but to reawaken it. Notice what shifts in you as you feel this, how still the body becomes when it no longer needs to grasp, how open the breath feels when you are no longer negotiating with life. You are not trying to get to the end. You are resting in it. You are curling inward like a child, into the memory of a dream that has already come true. And as you live in this stillness, something ancient awakens beneath the desire itself, a deeper will, a more silent knowing, a grace that no longer seeks, but gives, a joy that asks nothing, because it lacks nothing. This is the divine state, veiled in the simplicity of imagination, and the more you abide in it, the more you discover it was never about what you manifested. It was always about who you remembered yourself to be. And yet in this remembering, the forms still come, the world still bends, the facts still shift, but you no longer wait for them. You do not live for their arrival. You live from their fulfillment, and the fulfillment becomes its own reward. But if that's true, if fulfillment is already yours inwardly, then what would it mean to let even the final outcome fall away? To live not for the manifestation, but for the sacred feeling of being complete without it. To live not for the manifestation, but for the sacred feeling of completeness. This is the final shedding. Here even desire dissolves into stillness. The seed has been planted so fully that you no longer check for signs, no longer peer through the veil, hoping for confirmation. You have become the harvest itself. You walk not as one who waits, but as one who is. And from this posture, a deeper wonder rises. If you are whole, if you are fulfilled before the world ever bends, then what was the purpose of the manifestation to begin with? Was it ever about the form, or was the form merely the echo of your return to self? The outer world does not complete you. It reveals that you were never incomplete. This is why the state akin to sleep is sacred. It asks you to die to the old and rise as the new, not just in imagination, but in tone, in breath, in being. You slip under the surface of the mind, and enter a chamber of perfect union, not with a thing, but with the one who no longer lacks anything. And in that inner sanctuary, you are reborn without effort. Be still, and know that I am God. Not do more, not believe harder, simply be still. In that stillness, you come to know, not through study, but through becoming. You become the feeling of answered prayer. You become the rhythm of peace fulfilled. And from that quiet place, the outer must follow. But now you notice something even more subtle. The desire you once carried so urgently has changed shape. It no longer arrives with grasping hands. It arrives like a whisper, like a breeze. It asks only to be felt, and then released. You no longer chase. You touch and let go. You imagine and rest. You dwell and trust. This is the alchemy of assumption. What you embody inwardly, without resistance, must move outwardly into form. Not because you hold on, but because you have let go so fully, that the world must now match your surrender. And as you fall deeper into the state, night after night, breath after breath, you realize this is not a practice, it is a remembering. The end you are entering is not new, it is ancient, it has always belonged to you. You are not imagining something foreign, you are returning to your original vibration, your native land. You live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled not to get something, but because it feels like home. And in that home, everything aligns, time softens, delay disappears, the road bends to greet your feet. You are not chasing miracles, you are the miracle remembering itself. And so the need to control falls away. You no longer sculpt the details, you no longer rehearse outcomes, you simply let the scene play within you, and then trust it to unfold without you. You sow the vision, and you rest in the invisible soil of consciousness. The form is not your work, the state is. Stay here, stay in the essence, the texture, the breath of the end. Let it be simple, let it be soft. The more natural it becomes, the more inevitable its expression. You are not scripting life, you are tuning into the station where it already sings. Let the sleep carry you now, not into unconsciousness, but into deeper knowing. The state akin to sleep is not about drowsiness, it is about surrender. The body relaxes, the mind loosens its grip, and the soul steps forward, clothed in the assumption it never stopped believing. And in this place, beneath effort, beneath striving, beneath identity itself, you become pure awareness. You become the I am before it said, "Let there be." You become the source of all forms, resting in the silence before creation begins. And what emerges from that silence, not just the thing you imagined, but the you who no longer needs it, the you who walks in beauty, because beauty has already taken root in your being, the you who prays without asking, because the answer is already held within the tone of your breath. And if that is true, if the end is already yours, if the scene has already been impressed, if the self has already shifted, then what remains but to trust the unfolding, and walk forward, as though nothing has been denied? What remains but peace?
And what remains but peace? The peace that comes not from outcome, but from origin. The peace of one who no longer bargains with life, but blesses it, who no longer holds the vision with clenched hands, but rests in the knowing that the vision was never separate from the self. This is the quiet radiance that forms in the soul of the one who truly lives in the end, not to receive, but to remember. For to remember is to restore, to gather the scattered fragments of thought and feeling, and return them to the throne of I am. And when all of you abides there, when no part of you wanders in doubt or delay, then life no longer feels like waiting. It becomes unfolding, a flowering of what was planted long ago in the unseen. This is the secret of the sacred state. You are not creating the end, you are consenting to it. And in that consent, the world reshapes, not because you commanded it, but because you aligned with what already is. This is why the imagination must be felt, not forced. It is not a tool to manipulate reality. It is the doorway through which reality flows. The more gently you hold the state, the more surely it holds you. And in that holding, all effort dissolves. You find yourself resting into the assumption, as into warm waters. No need to swim, no need to strive, only to float in the knowing that all is done. Before they call, I will answer. And while they are yet speaking, I will hear. This is the promise of the eternal. The response does not follow the request. The response precedes it. For the desire and its fulfillment are one movement in consciousness. They are not opposites. They are reflections, two sides of the same holy breath. And so you let go of needing to see it. You let go of signs. You let go of needing others to confirm what you feel. You live in the state, not because it proves something to the world, but because it proves you to yourself. And that is enough. You begin to notice that the state itself becomes your fulfillment. That the outer forms, while welcome, no longer define your peace. You do not check for movement. You do not track progress. You no longer harvest from the field. You become the field. The end is no longer ahead of you. It is within you, woven into your stillness, breathed through your being. And in that stillness, you notice something beautiful. Life becomes simple again. You are not busy creating. You are quietly allowing. You are not holding tension in the body. You are letting the body become an extension of your assumption. You sit, stand, move, as if it were already true, because to you it is. And this as if is not pretense. It is remembrance. You are not acting out a fantasy. You are moving from a truth felt so deeply that it becomes invisible. No one sees it, yet everything bends to it. This is the power of still assumption. It does not shout. It does not demand, but it is, and because it is, all things must conform. Let yourself feel this now, the sacred weightlessness of knowing it is done, not hoping, not questioning, simply breathing as though all things have unfolded. The house is yours, the letter is written, the body is healed, the relationship is whole, not someday, not soon, now. And when this feeling becomes your resting place, the state akin to sleep ceases to be a doorway you enter, it becomes your dwelling. A sacred chamber you carry with you through all hours. You fall asleep in it. You wake in it. You speak from it. You walk the earth as its living proof. But if you can feel the end so fully, so richly, that nothing more is needed, then what becomes of time? What becomes of delay, of process, of waiting and hoping and striving? What happens when you no longer ask when, because you already know who? What happens when you no longer ask when, because you already know who? Time begins to loosen its grip. The pressure it once held dissolves in the warmth of identity remembered. You are no longer a servant of the clock. You become a vessel through which eternity touches earth. The delay was never in the world, it was in the belief that you were not yet ready. But now you know readiness is not preparation, it is alignment, and alignment is immediate. The moment you return to your inner name, I am, not I will be, not I hope to become, but I am. And in that sacred affirmation, all time collapses into presence. You feel this in the silence of the state. In that soft descent into imaginal absorption, time disappears. There is no future to reach toward, there is only now, and the now is full. You are the healed one now, the loved one now, the wealthy one now, and because this is your inner atmosphere, the outer cannot resist its pull. The world is not separate from you, it is not a realm you try to bend, it is the mirror of your felt identity. You do not control it with force, you harmonize it by dwelling in the assumption that leaves no room for doubt, and so the concept of waiting begins to feel strange. You no longer measure the hours by what has or hasn't arrived. You begin to measure time only by the depth of your dwelling. The longer you remain in the feeling of the end, the more real it becomes, not later, but now. You stop asking how long, and start asking how deeply. This is the secret rhythm of SATS. It is not about duration, but devotion. You do not need to linger for hours. One moment of true assumption, one breath fully filled with the tone of already so, outweighs 1,000 thoughts of striving. Let this comfort you. You are not trying to accumulate belief. You are surrendering to a single inner moment of complete knowing. That knowing does not require evidence. It is the evidence, and once felt, it cannot be unfelt. You may still have passing thoughts of fear. Doubts may whisper, but they no longer reign. You have stepped into a higher chamber of consciousness, and from here, the lower voices grow quiet. They may knock, but you no longer answer. You are too deeply rooted in the end, and this rooting is gentle. It does not require effort, only consistency, only a willingness to turn again and again to the scene that feels like home. You become familiar with it, not as an image, but as a mood, a tone that colors every thought, a vibration that lingers even when your mind wanders. This is where the transformation takes place, not in the intellect, but in the atmosphere of self. And the longer you live in that inner tone, the more seamless the bridge of events becomes. The outer world begins to follow you, not with delay, but with obedience, because it is not truly following, it is you externalized. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The substance is not in the thing, it is in the state, and you carry that state into sleep like a holy garment. You clothe your awareness with it, until it becomes indistinguishable from you, and from that clothed self, you begin to see the world anew. You walk into rooms differently, you answer the phone differently, you look at yourself in the mirror, and no longer wait for change. You see the changed one, and know that seeing is the law fulfilled. You do not rush, you do not beg, you know, and in this knowing, all things unfold with grace. But if the world is your reflection, and the state is already real, then who were you before you believed you had to become? What if even the concept of growth was a shadow of forgetting? What if you were never meant to evolve, but simply to remember the self that never left the end? What if you were never meant to evolve, but simply to remember the self that never left the end? That self has no beginning, and no end. It does not grow, it reveals. It does not reach forward, it draws all things toward it, through the magnetic pull of knowing. It is not a future version of you, it is the buried present, veiled only by the idea of becoming. And so you sit now, not to improve yourself, but to return. You do not try to ascend, you descend inward, into the temple of being. You descend with soft breath, and relaxed limbs. You descend without effort, for gravity itself is grace. It carries you back to what already is. The state akin to sleep is not a door to a future world, it is a dissolving of illusion, the illusion that anything stands between you and what has always been yours. When you enter that sacred softness, when the mind grows quiet and the body becomes like air, there is no distance left to travel. You are not moving toward manifestation, you are removing the veil that says you are separate from it. You feel this in the way your chest loosens, in the gentle warmth that spreads across your awareness. You are no longer rehearsing scenes, you are reliving them. You are not creating a fantasy, you are touching what already happened in the realm that matters most, the unseen, where all things begin. This is not imagination as play, this is imagination as remembrance. It is the divine faculty through which you re-enter the garden you never truly left. Adam did not fall outward, he fell inward, into forgetfulness, and it is through imaginal awakening that the cherubim step aside, and let you pass again through the flaming sword into Eden. You do not need to convince yourself, you only need to dwell long enough for the false self to fade. The false self is restless, it seeks proof, it hunts for how, but the true self, the self aligned with I am, rests in quiet confidence. It knows that the fruit appears not from doing, but from abiding. Abide in me, and I in you, says the Christ of your own imagination, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. The vine is your assumption, your state, your inner knowing. When you abide there, the fruit grows by nature, not by toil, but by identity. And this is why you must be gentle. The soil of consciousness does not respond to pressure, it responds to surrender. The deeper your stillness, the quicker the seed takes root. You plant not with force but with faith. You feel the scene, you savor the state, and you rest. Let yourself rest now. Let the mind loosen, let the breath slow. You are not entering the state to get something. You are entering because you already have it. The feeling is enough. It is the currency of creation. You do not need the thing. You only need to become the one who no longer questions its arrival. And from this rested posture, you begin to glimpse something even more profound. You realize that you have never been waiting for the manifestation. The manifestation has been waiting for you to stop seeking and start assuming, for you to stop looking and start being. This is why the bridge of events can move so swiftly once the assumption is firm, because it is not effort that speeds the journey, it is surrender. You do not walk to the end, you fall into it, you fall into it, you fall asleep in it, you bathe in it, and in that sleep the world rearranges. You feel it now, don't you? That sacred softening, that blessed forgetfulness of the old self. The personality fades, the ego quiets, only the vibration remains, the tone of fulfillment, humming quietly beneath all thought. Let it carry you tonight. Let it cradle you as you sink beneath the surface. Let every cell in your body echo the knowing, it is done, I am already there. And if that is true, if you are already in possession of the end, then what becomes of striving, of doing, of asking? What becomes of the one who prayed with longing, now that all longing has turned to light? What becomes of the one who prayed with longing, now that all longing has turned to light? That one dissolves, not with sorrow, but with relief. The seeker falls away, and in their place stands the one who has found, not a thing, but a self, not an answer, but the remembrance that the answer was always buried within the question. When you live in the end, the prayer shifts. It is no longer, give me, but thank you, not a reaching up, but a settling in. And this settling, this holy relaxation, is the very heart of Satan. For what else is the state akin to sleep, but the surrender of striving? You do not command the body into it, you invite it, gently, lovingly. As you would soothe a child into slumber, you coax your senses to release. You dim the outer light, not only in the room, but in the mind. You let the noise soften. You let the weight of the day fall from your shoulders like a garment too heavy to carry into the dream. And then in that sacred softness you feel into the scene, not as a viewer, but as a dweller. You are not watching the end, you are the end. You see the world through the eyes of the one who already received, already rejoiced, already remembered their place in the divine order. It may begin with a single feeling, peace, relief, gratitude, delight. Let it blossom, let it wrap around your breath like warm silk. This is not visualization as work, this is resurrection. You are calling forth the life that is already yours, hidden in God, waiting in the unseen for your consent. And your consent is simple, you feel it real. Even now, as your body softens, as your thoughts slow, as the rhythm of your breath deepens into sacred ease, even now, the state is forming, the bridge is building, not outside of you, but through you. For you are not the observer of the miracle, you are the cause. You are not the one being granted a blessing, you are the blessing revealed. This is the great inversion of spiritual law. What the world calls cause, you call effect, and what the world calls future, you live now. And in this now, all things gather in harmony. People show up, paths open, conditions change, but they do not do so by chance. They move in obedience to your assumption, and so you rest, not in delay, but in unfolding. You lie down not to hope, but to receive. You breathe not to escape, but to enter. The kingdom is not far, it is within.
and every breath in the state makes it more visible. Let yourself remain here, in this gentle saturation of being. Let every word you hear return you to the stillness that knows. You need not repeat affirmations. You need not force a smile. The truth requires no decoration. It simply waits for you to be still, and know that I am God. The state akin to sleep is not about sleep. It is about surrender. It is the moment the clay stops shaping and lets the shape be revealed. It is the moment the seed stops striving to sprout and yields to the warmth of the soil. And when you surrender fully, you realize something more. The state is not just where you go, it is who you are. It does not begin when you close your eyes, nor does it end when you rise. It is a posture of being, a dwelling place from which you think, feel, move and speak. And from this dwelling place, you discover a deeper power still, the power to revise, to redeem, to resurrect what the world said was final. For if imagination is God in action, then there is no past unchangeable, no memory too solid, no wound too deep. But how do you revise from the state? How do you become the silent author of yesterday's script, not to rewrite history, but to align with truth? What does it mean to go back? Not with regret, but with love. You go back not with regret, but with love, because love alone revises without resistance. Love does not fight the memory. It does not curse the moment. It simply sees again, through the eyes of truth, what once was seen through fear. And in that holy second look, the whole pattern shifts. To revise from the state akin to sleep is to re-enter the scene in stillness, in silence, and in authority. You do not argue with what happened. You overwrite it, not with denial, but with divinity. The same imagination that once clothed you in sorrow, now clothes you in peace. You take the moment, however bruised or broken it may seem, and you return to it like a sculptor to unfinished stone. But this time, you do not carry the vibration of the victim. You carry the tone of the Redeemer. You do not react, you refrain. See it now. That conversation, that event, that wound you once carried. Let it rise in memory, not to punish, but to be made whole. Let the scene unfold before you like a play returning to rehearsal. This time, enter it consciously. This time, speak not from pain but from presence. Feel the new ending. Hear the new tone in the words exchanged. Let the tension dissolve. Let the forgiveness arrive. Let the joy fulfill the space where once there was lack. This is not imagination for entertainment. This is imagination as resurrection. You are giving new life to what the world thought dead. You are not changing the outer past. You are transforming the inner echo that still casts its shadow. And when that echo shifts, the entire melody of your life changes key. Why does this work? Because the only place the past lives is within you. There is no outer history that binds you, only the story you continue to tell in your mind. And every story, no matter how long it has run, can be revised by assumption. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be white as snow. What is this but the law of inner rewriting? No stain is permanent, no scene is final. In the theater of consciousness, you are the playwright and the audience, the actor and the light. And so you enter the state, akin to sleep, not just to imagine the future, but to bless the past. You drift between waking and sleeping with a quiet authority that rewrites timelines. You are not held by the former things, you are freeing them, one breath at a time. And as you revise, the outer world adjusts, perhaps subtly at first, like a shift in temperature, a different tone in a familiar voice, then more clearly, events rearranging themselves to match the new inner pattern. People respond differently. Paths open where once there were walls, not because the world changed, but because you did. And it began here, in the silence, in the softness, in the sacred act of assuming something new while the senses grew still. So let this be your practice, not just at night, but in any moment the old memory stirs. Pause, enter the state, close your eyes, if you must, or simply turn inward, and ask not, why did this happen, but what would love create here now? Feel it real, rewrite with the pen of peace, and when you open your eyes again, carry that revision as your truth. Let the old version fall away. It has served its purpose. It brought you here, to the place where you remember that you are not the effect of your past, you are the cause of your unfolding. And what if if you began to revise not just what hurt you, but what you thought was neutral? What if you went back through the seemingly mundane, ordinary conversations, overlooked days, and filled them with light? What if your entire memory became a garden of the fulfilled? What if your entire memory became a garden of the fulfilled, not because it always was, but because you dared to water it with new vision? You see now that the revision is not deception, nor escape. It is alignment with the deeper truth, buried beneath the dust of appearances, the truth that nothing in your life has ever been outside the reach of grace, and this grace does not ask for explanation, it does not wait for conditions, it simply acts when you assume. You do not need to understand how, you only need to remain faithful to the state, as one who walks by inner light, rather than outer evidence, and the world, obedient to your inner command, reshapes itself in silence. Every assumption is a seed, every imaginal act, a germination, and every night, as you lie back into the state akin to sleep, you return to the field, where all these seeds are planted. The ground is softest here, the veil thinnest, the gate widest, and in this luminous space between waking and sleep, you become the gardener of your reality. You plant through feeling, you water through repetition, you trust the unseen, you do not return in doubt to dig up what you've sown, you simply rest, knowing that in stillness, the law is at work. The longer you remain in the end, the more natural it becomes, not effort, but ease, not hoping, but knowing. You have not learned a technique, you have remembered a power, the same power that called light out of darkness, and life out of dust, now calls your world into being, not from outside, but from within. And every night, as you descend into the sacred twilight of SATS, you are not escaping life, you are creating it. So let the final breath tonight be a breath of release. Let the last thought be the imaginal scene fulfilled. Let the feeling of the wish already realized become your resting place. This is not fantasy, it is law. All things whatsoever ye pray for and desire, believe that ye have received them, and ye shall have them. Not someday, now. You no longer wait to be chosen, you choose. You no longer pray for permission, you assume. You no longer strive to earn what is already yours, you inhabit it. And if ever you forget, if ever the world seems louder than the voice within, return here, to the breath, to the stillness, to the state, akin to sleep, where all things are restored. Return to your bed as to an altar. Lie down not in fatigue, but in faith. For what you imagine in this holy silence becomes flesh. You are not the dreamer hoping to awaken, you are the awakening disguised as a dream. And as you rest tonight in the felt reality of your fulfilled desire, remember this above all: there is no power outside of you, nothing to wait for, no gatekeeper to bless your vision. You are the operant power, you are the temple and the flame, the question and the answer, the path and the destination. Let the world do what it must, let the winds of change carry the scenes into place. You need not chase, you only need to dwell. Stay here, beloved, in the feeling. Return here, as often as needed. The more you sleep in the end, the more you will wake in its lightness. Now, feel the silence deepen, feel the identity settle. The wish is fulfilled, the work is done. What remains is rest, and in this rest, all things are made new.